technology, we saw it now twice, can fail and will fail at the crucial moment. So IT will fail. Cell phones will not work. New York, Sandy, one of the first things that failed was the cell phone system. The disaster that we want to prepare for will not happen. There will always happen another disaster that will be different from the last one. So how do we deal with that? Who has an opinion on that?
I do. Because I think, well, if a city becomes self-sustaining, and if you make your in a neighborhood, you make your own energy, you can grow your own food and so on, then you are less dependent on all those things. Of course, there will go things wrong, but if you have a smart grid under it that connects several energy systems or communication systems to each other, then like the internet, if a part of it is falling out, it will go on. The internet was developed a lot of years ago to survive atomic bomb attack. So if one center was hit by atomic bomb, the internet should go on forever. It should go via other routes. So you can make such a same kind of grid also for energy, and you can make it for all kinds of other communication systems over the internet or over other systems, and that will give possibilities to survive also if a disaster happens. If you make your own energy, for instance, like now in New York, the problem was not as big as now. Now they are dependent on some big power supplies far away, and with very bad connection in between, and then they are not depending anymore.
Okay, well, Ruud's opinion, more or less, problem will be solved in the far future. But if you just look in the near future, we saw a defense center, and it's also a little bit the philosophy of our FloodControl 2015 program. We develop smart control systems that rely on IT technology and on modern communication tools to act during a crisis. We need that information to decide. And what do we do in case the system fails? It's really a discussion also in the Netherlands. Do we need smarter levees? Do we need smart dikes with sensor technology that will warn us in time, and information systems that will guide us through safe places and prevent us from the flood? Or do we need robust, more natural systems, building with nature, giving space to water, live with water, give room to the rivers, where we are not going to rely on this IT technology, although it has a dazzling development, of course, but we go more back to the natural, more sustainable systems. Who has an opinion on that? Just let's ask the audience, and let's say the speakers and the Rotterdam people reflect on that if they want. Would like to hear some different people. Yeah.
Yes, I'm Wouter Zomer of the Eikdijk Foundation, and of course I think we should have some smart levees, but information only coming from ICT systems and monitoring systems in levees will not provide the safety you really need. So the first safety is always strong levees, strong sluices, etc., etc. Nonetheless, information can provide you a better safety position when you can predict where levees, which are strong, could fail. So that you can take your countermeasures, evacuate people, tell them to go at the attic, bring some water and food, because something is probably happening. So I think both.
There's a very strong different opinion. The natural guys of people. Sustainable, strong.
No. Well, I'm more the natural guy. Let's say that I'm first for the natural approach, no levies. If the levy is necessary, then build a strong levy, and okay, then I can imagine if we are thinking 100 years from now, then why should we maintain living near the coast, in the lowlands? Maybe we have to move somewhere else.
Good point.
Switzerland.
Good point. Okay, just
or maybe we should look for measures that we heighten the lowlands.
Good point. Well, I think this case is a good illustration of your opinion. New Orleans. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, you see here.
Hi, my name is Colonel Ed Fleming. I'm a colonel in the United States Army, and I work for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in New Orleans, Louisiana. I want to welcome you guys to the FloodRisk 2012 conference, and I wanted to take a minute to tell you a little bit about the City of New Orleans, the Corps of Engineers, and the work that we do to reduce risk due to flooding. You know, the City of New Orleans is very unique in its geography. It's one of the only cities in the United States of America that has to worry about flooding from really 3 different areas. Number one, being on the Gulf of Mexico, we are very susceptible to storm surge that comes from hurricanes, and that normally comes up from the south. Number two, the Mississippi River runs straight through the middle of the city of New Orleans, and so we are susceptible to a riverine flood based on water that comes from the north. And number three, most of the city of New Orleans and the surrounding area is below sea level. So every drop of rain that falls in the city and in the greater New Orleans area has to be pumped out. So there are 3 ways that the city can flood: from storm surge from a hurricane, from a riverine flood, and from rainfall. And of course that all is taken into the prism of subsidence and sea level rise that is very critical to us to take into account as we try to reduce the risk from flooding in all of those 3 areas. You know, we've had to use a lot of different technologies after Hurricane Katrina, which hit this area August 29, 2005, as we went about rebuilding this system. This area is known for its organic soils. It is very, very soft, and it's very hard to build levees and flood walls in this area. So we've had to take that into account as we use things like deep soil mixing or wick drains to be able to strengthen the soil to give us a better foundation to build levees and flood walls, gated structures in this area. It's been my pleasure to give you a couple of comments and to tell you a little bit about the City of New Orleans, and I hope you enjoy your time at the FloodRisk Conference 2012.
Okay, so this was a reflection from a delta city where water comes from all directions. I think Arnoud and John could tell almost the same story about the city of Rotterdam. Ruud and Jivan did not really touch upon that topic, and that's of course our interest here is the delta city, the future delta city. And my question would be, if you look at that delta city now in the far future, what does it look like and how are we going to protect it with flood control kind of systems as we showed here? Is it going to be in the IT technology? Is it going to be in the mass communication and media? Is it going to be in civil engineering, like New Orleans has solved these problems with concrete flood walls and storm surge barriers? Or opinion that we heard from the backside, are we stupid to live in these cities and should we move out? They're not sustainable in the long run. They will disappear. Say stupid. Huh? So
maybe I would like to add something on.
Let me finish my sentence first, please. So my question is, how do we envisage these delta cities in the future, and how do we look at the flood protection system that they will need? Who has an opinion?
Well, I would also like to add that I have the micro, so I can keep on talking. It's not only we are here discussing on flood control, but I know there are other groups who would say flood control is not the major issue. We have also the dredge material, which costs us an enormous amount of money. We have to prevent the estuary becoming a brown river, so there's too much sediment in it, and they also need space to get rid of all this material. And so what I believe is that we don't have to focus on flood control only, because otherwise then the solution will be only partial.
You made your point, but it's one of our topics here now. So, other opinion, and try to imagine that a city like Dhaka, for instance, which we would like to protect in 2100, might have 100 million inhabitants. Try to imagine.
It's on already. Well, I think an important part of the equation of flood protection is smart zoning of land use, and maybe looking into change of land use, making the whole city and its different activities less vulnerable to a flood event. And I know that's difficult for existing cities, but I think there's a major key there.
There will be unlimited sprawl at unprecedented speed. You cannot imagine the number of people that will flock into these cities. None of them can already deal now with intelligent or careful spatial planning. So how do you deal with that challenge?
No, but with land use zoning, you take the intelligence of the system out and you prepare the city for being less susceptible to flood damage.
Okay, other opinions on that topic? The future Delta City?
It's not really the future Delta City, but other topics belonging to it, like data management. We talked about data management, we are talking about monitoring and about maintenance of the constructions. And just 2 weeks ago I visited a wire facility in Germany, and a very modern one, and equipped with a lot of sensors for monitoring, for remote control of this system. And if we are talking about gates and locks, we are also talking about remote control in some way. And I'm not sure if that way, so that we want to make a remote control on everything, and we have the sensors there, we have a very smart system there, but I'm not sure if it really works properly always, if it's maybe better just to have some people there, because they can also hear it, not only get a electrical thing there, and it's also that way that you always have to change it. It's very, very cost intensive to equip the things with these sensors, with a fire protection equipment, and so on and so on. So I'm not sure if the way we are going now in our facilities is really the right way, also because of maintenance. Sometimes it's better just to have some people who are really involved in the system there, that they can maintain it.
Okay, thanks. I think we
May I comment on this one? May I comment on this one? Yeah. Of course, you need to really think when you are going to use sensor technology, and you always need a backup of people looking at the system. Last summer, we did we built a levee, installed sensors in it, and then destroyed it by water pressure. Yes, and far before the moment you could see with your eyes that the levee was going to break, the sensor technology gave information that it would break, and that's crucial information. So I think sometimes you're right, and sometimes it's also good to install sensors. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Sensor technology.
Good point.
Sometimes it's not.
Good point. Last movie is about Ho Chi Minh City, and Arnoud already invited us to think about the city.
Các vấn đề về cơ sở hạ tầng của thành phố Hồ Chí Minh hiện nay có những vấn đề như sau. Thứ nhất là ngập úng, thứ hai là vấn đề quy hoạch nhà ở các vùng đô thị và các vùng nông thôn chưa đồng bộ. Thứ ba là cái nhiệm vụ cung cấp về nước sạch, bảo vệ nguồn nước sạch đã khó khăn, lại càng khó khăn thêm trong tình hình biến đổi khí hậu như thế này. Thành phố Hồ Chí Minh cũng đã tích cực mở rộng quan hệ hợp tác quốc tế, tham gia hoạt động như gia nhập tổ chức C40, xây dựng kế hoạch hành động ứng phó với biến đổi khí hậu, ban hành chương trình năng lượng xanh, vân vân. Thì biến đổi khí hậu là vấn đề lớn đối với thành phố Hồ Chí Minh, là bị tác động bởi nhiều mặt. Vì vậy thành phố Hồ Chí Minh rất cần sự hợp tác và hỗ trợ của quốc tế về kỹ thuật, công nghệ, kinh nghiệm và tài chính để có thể tiếp tục phát triển ứng phó với biến đổi khí hậu theo hướng tăng trưởng xanh và phát triển bền vững.
Okay, thank you very much. Fortunately, there was a translation under that last one that would have been tough a little bit for you without. Before we maybe reflect on this last movie, I would like a question came in my mind, combining the last remarks to the nightmare that Jivan described of these immeasurable smart systems that will know so much more than us and know better. This unimaginable smart system, Jivan, with this sensor technology, will have very smart sensors that will register maybe weeks or months ahead of a failure, and wants to tell us already that it already knows that things will go wrong, but we don't know and we cannot see. But the system will tell us and will maybe try to dictate us that we need to change something because it knows, but we don't know. How are we going to deal with that?
It knows, but we don't know. The X-Files. Is
that the kind of nightmare scenarios that our managers will have to deal with?
Well, we already have that. Yeah. It's called the financial system. Not true. There is not a single expert in the world who knows how the algorithms work that deal with cash. And that's because the algorithms are, for many years, are already self-learning. So they modify themselves, and if they come to a better transaction, and these are transactions in milliseconds, that algorithm takes over. So that system has evolved, and there's not a single person anymore in the world, and yet we depend with the whole society on that system.
So and that future is already happening there.
The future is already here. We just have to learn from that and make sure we don't make the same mistakes in that case. Okay. The gentleman in the back had a good point. It's all about resilience. So you should not build in a place that's prone to flood risk. But if you decide to do it, it's a good thing to have a levee over there and some pumps. And it's an even better thing to have a smart levee over there that gives you a signal that it might be failing. Yeah, he's gone, the guy from Hansje Brinker, but they did some analysis. There was a shopping center that collapsed, partly collapsed in the Netherlands, and they were able to, with historical data from 30 years back, to see 2 years in advance that particular pillar was sinking away, was moving, was deforming. So we just have to get used that there's other ways to get signals, but then as a human being, keep control and do something with it. So I'm not afraid of technology. I'm much more afraid of mankind not doing the right things with it.
Okay, thank you. Hey, so coming back to this, to Arnoud's point.
And the funny thing is, Jivan, in your remarks you just made, you said if you decide to live in this low area, you can decide not to live there. But if you want to live there, you start first to build a levee. I want to raise the question: is that the first next step? Because why should you make a levee? Why not first investigate how to try to live with the water and to invest in an adaptive way? That's the thing that's keeping me. I know it's a bit, how do you call it, a curse in the church in this room, because we are talking about flood control.
I would like to, good point. Let's hear some opinions on that.
One example: the Mekong Delta, Jakarta. The first thing we say, we're going to build a large dam, and then we will see
a giant seawall. We call it.
Yes, that's exactly the point that I already felt that. What are we going to advise now to Jakarta and Ho Chi Minh City? And same may count for Dhaka and for Bangladesh. They are now at this point of this tremendous economic development, enormous growth of the city, unprecedented subsidence. In addition to that, sea level rise is not even that bad. Their subsidence is much worse. So they will have to deal with tremendous flood protection questions. At the same time, they're generating the money to build the system. They can afford it. For a long time, they could not afford it. they had to depend on foreign aid for that. Now they can take their own decisions. And the question is, they don't have those big dikes, so they're not addicted yet, like we are in the Netherlands or in New Orleans, where because of the levee system, our country went below sea level. So do we have to advise them to build their dikes and rely on them and protect themselves, is it? Or is there still time and space and opportunity for more sustainable solution? Who has an opinion on that?
Yes, just coming back to Dhaka. I know that drinking water and water for textile industry is a real problem. So the water table is lowering 3 meters a year. So the plans we are making now, even from the Dutch water companies, is building pipelines for drinking water to reservoirs that are going to build in the big rivers. My point is, I think if you go to the cities of the future, these delta cities, the claim on resources like water, but also food, that has to be done very clever. And I think dikes is not the solution. I think the people in Bangladesh have learned to live with the floods because it brought vruchtbare grond, fertile ground, which is good for food production. And if you started to build a dike, you get enormous amount of subsidence there. You have to pump more, need more energy. Your sediments go into the deep sea. You lose your natural resources. And you become more and more dependent
But if you live in Dhaka, you're a businessman. You have a computer shop or a television shop.
Yeah, exactly what happened in Bangkok. They are protecting the rich area. For flooding, and it means that other areas which are has not enough power to say that voice, they are the big numbers and victims. So you really need an integrated plan, a big plan for Bangladesh, dealing with water resources, with flooding, and also water for production.
Okay, thanks. Other opinions here on this topic? I think we're more. Okay, one more.
Maybe I'm not 100% correct, but you first asked what do we have to advise to people.
Yeah.
But then, if I recall correctly, some of the companies who are now on the screen and some other Dutch, but also other companies, they are already advising Ho Chi Minh today, and they are advising them build the storm surge barrier. So, why or what are you aiming with Flood Control 2100? Are you going to tell those guys also stop advising them? Maybe first we have to think other solutions, or?
Well, I can answer that. I'm the chairman of Flood Control 2015. We are absolutely not advising to build giant seawalls or storm surge barriers, because we're not into that kind of civil engineering. We are the guys who come up with smart systems. So the smarter the tools, the better. In the Netherlands, it means that we, given the fact that we have a levee system, we try to make that smarter. In Jakarta, for instance, given the fact that they don't have levees, we try to develop apps for cell phones, for smartphones, where people inform about the risk of an upcoming flood, so that they can take their own decisions and get out of the system. So there might be this possibility that you have, just like in, let's say, but it's hard to make that comparison. If you compare it to the telephone system, where we had to build all our landlines, and in China and in Africa they skip that step and they immediately go into the cell phone generation. Maybe you can do something with that, with your flood protection system as well, with very intelligent warning systems, but then we're back to this IT discussion, and maybe very intelligent warning systems combined with a city as sustainable as possible on higher ground, with maybe adaptive housing and adaptive buildings in the lower areas like we have in Rotterdam, maybe combined with floating parts of the cities in the lower or in the wettest areas. So maybe there is still an alternative. I've been writing the terms of reference for the Jakarta Coastal Defense Strategy, and I've been questioning the fact that it seemed like everybody was already focusing on a giant seawall. Not only the Dutch engineers, but also the Indonesian politicians, because it seemed to be a pretty good, simple solution, you know, giant seawall, everybody's safe, no big problems in the city. I still wonder if that's the best solution or if there are still alternatives to look for. But time is very short and these cities are getting so big and so complicated and the population density is so enormous and the economic values at stake are so high that we're really running out of options for these sustainable solutions. So I don't have the clue, but that was the background of my question. We're definitely not trying to push them to build barriers or dikes. Maybe that's also a good point to... I think we're out of time, running out of time. It's time. So I would like to... Is there anybody who has a very burning last remark? Famous last words? Then the famous last words were mine in this case. And of course I would like to thank you all very much. I loved this discussion. I really liked it. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed your participation and interaction. I think this was really a great session. I also would like to thank all those who have been preparing all this with the movies, and it made it also very, very visual, and that helped us, I think, in our discussion. I would like to thank our two speakers for their great presentations. And I would like to thank also our friends from Connecting Delta Cities from Rotterdam. If you have any questions about their program and their ambitions, go to Arnoud and John and ask them. Thank you all very much and see you around. Thank you.